Welcome to Midwest Small Town. My name is Dan. I'm your host.
And I'm Tammy.
And glad to be here as we are doing episode 2. And Tammy, you're going to be interviewing me. We're going right down. We talked about Charles City, Tammy's hometown. We're going to talk about my hometown of Cherokee. And then we got a whole host of other small town stuff that's coming up. So I'll let you take it away from there.
You bet. I'm so excited to talk about Cherokee. I think about the first time that I went to Cherokee. It wasn't until I met you.
She loved it.
I did. And I believe that was 1994 that I visited your hometown for the first time.
The coolest town.
And yeah, it's a special place to be. And I'm excited to hear more from you today about your hometown.
First and foremost, this is Cherokee, Iowa, not Cherokee, North Carolina. And of course, the name from Cherokee obviously does come from the tribal name. So, population of Cherokee, I'm trying to think about this right now. We're probably about the same size, maybe even a little smaller than Charles City now. Maybe 6,000?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. We're roughly around 6,000.
Okay. I think you're less.
You think we're less?
I
Okay,
do.
you keep going. I'm going to go ahead and... You know what our friend is? Google. So, Tammy, go ahead and ask. I'm going to look up the population.
I feel like Cherokee's smaller now, but maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. So, Dan, while you're looking, I don't know if you can do two things at once here, but what memories or what memorable story could you share about growing up in Cherokee?
Ooh, lots of memories. First and foremost, what did I say the population was? 6,000?
6,000?
I am 900 off.
Oh.
So that was 2021. So roughly around a little over 5,000.
Okay.
So is where it's at. So
It's a couple thousand smaller.
When I grew up there, though, I mean, it was right around 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw a population decrease of, 3,000, 4,000. I won't go into that because there's some catalysts that really created that.
Sure.
Memories.
Let's hear it.
Let's go down memory lane. So the Little Sioux River goes through my hometown. And I wasn't a river rat. You ever heard that term? Like, they're a river rat. That might even be a Mark Twain saying. But we did hang out, at least a lot of us kids, down by the river. Now, my mom and dad never wanted us to. Mom had stories of drownings. Be careful. There could be branches. It's dangerous. But you know what that does to the kids, right?
Especially boys.
Right? Did you say danger? Then we got to hang out down by the river. So there was a creek that went through the town. Willow Creek went through the town, and it emptied into the Little Sioux River. And so a lot of fun stuff that we did. Fishing. I think one time when the river was low, I went down to one of the sandbars.
So here's the question.
Yeah.
Did you ever get hurt?
No.
Okay. See?
No.
Mom worried for no reason.
No, she didn't even need to worry.
Very good.
It's no big deal, but it was a lot of fun going down there. And I know that canoeing and all that kind of stuff's big. And so that was great memories for me.
Dan, what were some of your favorite things to do or your favorite places to visit in Cherokee?
So some of the cool places in Cherokee, they have a museum actually called the Sanford Museum. And so again, it's just a really cool thing that you can go there, and they have the history of the Mill Creek Indians, which was a really, really big thing. They have, in that area, they even have an archaeological dig that they kind of investigated areas around that. There's pottery that they have on display there, and it's just really neat, the history. Now, I'll tell you, before we go too far, if you will picture Cherokee, it's really in this valley, and it's surrounded by these beautiful bluffs and hills. That's what the Little Sioux carved out. And so, especially in the fall, it is gorgeous.
It's so pretty.
You can drive down as you're going into Cherokee, and you can see the beautiful trees. And on the edge of town, they used to have, you can still see it, a big ski hill. It used to be called Sunset Ski Area. So back in the day, that was pretty cool. And then they turned into a tubing hill. And here's the thing. So even though those don't exist anymore, sledding and tubing still do. And I remember going to different areas in Iowa that are flat and saying, you call that a hill?
Yeah.
Come back to my town.
Did you spend very much time on that hill? Did you do much skiing?
I did a little bit. But there's all, so many other things to do as well. But yes, we definitely did hang out there as well.
Fun. Dan, are there any historical events that have shaped or did shape Cherokee?
All right. So historically, Cherokee has a lot of things kind of going for it. I'll just kind of mention that this one of the 4 state hospitals was placed in Cherokee, so the Mental Health Institute. And that was right at the turn of the century, so the early 1800s, 1804, I'm going off the top of my head here. But what makes it so famous, actually, the Kirkbride system is what they would construct their buildings. And if you looked at from the top down, it almost looks like a big bat wing from Batman, right? It's one big continuous building. And what they would
not know that.
Yeah, true story. And so what they would do in these mental health institutions or hospitals is the whole philosophy was that the more severe your mental illness, the further on the outside of the wings you would be.
Oh, interesting.
They would have one door in, one door out, which was kind of in the center.
Mm-hmm.
And as you got better, you would work towards the center. The whole philosophy mental that you would work your way out.
Okay. Makes sense.
Something sad, though, of course, historically, with not just Cherokee, but a lot of state hospitals and mental institutions across the country was the rules as far as like when you would, put someone in and you'd have them institutionalized. It could be because they were alcoholics. They could have been a housewife that wasn't doing her work appropriately. So there's always these stories of abuse that happened because it only took one person to commit them, and it took one person who committed to get them out.
Okay.
And so sometimes the sad story is that they never did get out, some of them.
Sure.
And that's just one thing. Now here's the neat thing. The history of the mental health is that they believed that the part of the recovery process was nature. So they would encourage people to go outside, walk around, and if you've ever been on the grounds,
what a beautiful place to be
State
able
Hospital,
to do that.
it is one of the most beautiful grounds in the state, period.
Absolutely. We've been up there a lot.
Yeah, and beautiful grounds to hike around, beautiful grounds. They have probably one of the state's best disc golf courses.
It's true.
So personally, I love the area, and I know that the history is there, but the history needs to be told. And you can go visit a museum that exists at the M.H.I. It's in the tunnels.
Oh.
And you have to go ahead and you set an appointment up to go do that. They would love to show you what they have in that museum, the history of our state mental facilities right there in Cherokee.
Anything else, Dan?
Yes. So the big event that happens in town, and it is historical because it's been going on for quite a while now, is the Memorial Day Rodeo. So the Cherokee Rodeo is, quite frankly, very popular in Northwest Iowa and West Iowa. People come from all over to
Very
go
popular.
to this rodeo.
They have a really fun parade beforehand.
It's awesome.
It is.
Memories of sitting on, it's 2nd Street or Highway 59 going straight south through town. They would drive the horses from the Barnes Ranch, which was kind of, northeast of town. They would drive all the horses from the ranch down through Cherokee and to the rodeo. And that was so cool to watch that.
Really neat. Awesome. And it's still going on today. So
Still going.
People can check it out. Dan, I'm wondering, how has the local economy evolved in Cherokee?
So I briefly touched upon that in terms of the same thing that you were talking about, White Farm in Charles City yesterday.
Yeah.
And we experienced something very similar to that, except it wasn't, a tractor. It was a meatpacking plant. And so my dad worked there. He was a meat packer for 35 years, so I'm a meat packer's son, and I really know this story well. But Wilson Foods, they made hot dogs, and I remember I thought my dad had the coolest job in the world. When I was asking first grade, what does your dad do? It's like, my dad makes hot dogs, right? And it was one of the coolest things. But that plant probably went through 3-4 buyouts. Wilson Foods got bought out by Continental. Continental got bought out by IBP. IBP changed over to Tyson's. And so eventually, as buyouts happen, a little more was taken away, and eventually it closed down for good. And so they lost quite a few jobs. And so when you look at when I graduated in the 90s, that town was probably around 8,000.
Right.
Now it's down close to 5,000. And so you could see some job loss there.
Definitely had an effect there, for sure.
It did. Now, there's some exciting things going on in Cherokee from an economic development side. And that is, if you've ever been downtown, they have done a fantastic job with their main street. The stores that are down there, man, I tell you what, one of my favorite ones is the Book Vine, because you know me.
Dan's a reader.
I'm a reader.
It's very cool in there.
And it's really cool. And the owner, Molly McLaughlin, she has done a fantastic job really putting that all together. It is a top-notch bookstore for the size of the town it is. And I love her concept that she mixed wine and books. So you can go and you can actually buy a very nice, fine bottle of wine there. And she talks about that, she's open to talk to you, about the books, about the wine. She's very, very, very good business person and a very sweet person. Another one, Mud on Main. So they opened up a coffee shop, and that started small. Mm-hmm. And now she's bought a new building, and so that's grown.
That's awesome.
And so there's a lot of cool places. The Gast House, which has been there forever.
It's so good.
Great place to get a burger. I love their burgers there. So it's good food. And so you can go on and on. So the Main Street, they're doing a great job. The American Theater, we also have a theater in our town.
Excellent.
And that is...
Been to a few movies there.
They've done a great job. That used to be the old Opera House. They changed that historically. So there are some great things that are going on that they're doing now. Bigger jobs. Of course, they're bringing on that. And they are working to bring more jobs in the area as well. But it is really a nice town. It's safe. You can walk downtown. You can go to a park that they have on the south side of town called Spring Lake Park. And that is a fantastic place as well.
We've had a few family reunions there.
Just a couple.
Dan, I'm wondering, what are some of the must-see attractions that you would want to highlight for Cherokee?
Spring Lake Park. I just talked about it, but, I didn't do it justice saying it for 5 seconds. You really do need to check that park out if you're in Cherokee. You can walk around. They've got a paved path. I want to say... I'm shooting at 2 miles, but is that too much? It's at least a mile around there, and it is beautiful. You can walk completely around. They have cleaned it up as far as, the Canadian geese that they've had.
Right.
And so the lake is actually pretty.
It is. And I think your parents probably went around that park
a lot
of times.
A lot.
Yeah, they really enjoyed it.
They even have a World War I cannon on the hill, which I'm obsessed with.
I forgot about that.
I'm obsessed with it. I'm like, that is the coolest thing. But so the park for sure is definitely. So history. You're still talking about Cherokee here, but if you go a few miles south of town, and I know the Iowa Gallivant, if you've ever heard of him, he's a fantastic blogger in Iowa. I'm good friends with Jay, and he asked me, hey, I'm coming to Cherokee. I'm doing this tour there, Dan. What's there to see? And I said, go check out Pilot Rock. And I remember he said, what's Pilot Rock? And so I went into this whole story about, back in the day, Pilot Rock was a navigating tool, for pioneers. And pioneers would use that. So where did that come from, right? I've heard stories when I was a kid. It's like, it was a meteor. And it wasn't a meteor, but the glaciers dropped that rock off. And that's where it stayed. And even back in the day, they had to stop. Pioneers would chip some of the rock away to make their foundations in their house. They had to stop it because a lot of that rock was starting to disappear. And so now it's on private ground, so you can't go up to it. But they do have a little picnic area there that's right across Highway 59 from Pilot Rock Manufacturing. It's right there. Now,
correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the same rock that your dad had to come get you at one night?
So just understand, anyone that's listening to this that owns this land, this was way back, probably before you owned it. So Yeah, so in the early 90s, it was kind of our last hurrah as seniors in high school, and I lost track of time. My dad had to come get me.
Oh, goodness. Well, Dan, I'm thinking about your time growing up in Cherokee, and I'm wondering if there's anything that had a great impact on you or that you want to share with us about growing up in Cherokee before we end this today.
I think one of the things that I remember is our school system in Cherokee, because since it was small enough, we could get involved in a lot of things. And
you were involved in everything.
I was involved in all the sports. I was involved in choir. I was involved in band. I was involved in speech. And some people might say, well, man, that's almost too much. But because it was smaller, we could do that. Now, some schools are so big that you almost have to pick and choose.
True.
Otherwise, you just can't do that. And I think about the experiences I've had, and it made me a more well-rounded person.
Absolutely.
Since the schools were smaller, we valued our relationships a little bit better. So I feel like our teachers could invest in us more. The friendships we had, are still today. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like, well, I just know 5 or 6 people from my class. It's more like, no, I know the entire class. And we had like 100.
Absolutely. And just having those connections and being able to continue to grow those is special.
For sure.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I loved learning and hearing more about Cherokee today. And hopefully our listeners will know something new that they maybe didn't know before.
And if there is any questions that you might have, love to hear from you. Again, you can email us at midwestsmalltown@gmail.com. You could also reach out to us on our website, which is midwestsmalltown.com. And again, love to hear from all of you. If you would so kindly like to subscribe, follow along, we love the connections that we make. So we always close our episodes with "Go small, come home." Why do you think we say that?
Oftentimes, small towns, no matter where you are, what small town you're in, will feel like home.
Exactly. And I feel sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle and you feel like, well, this is just too big. And so when we say "go small, come home," that's kind of what we mean. Like, hey, come home. Don't just, obviously we want to give you tips when you travel to places, but if you feel like getting out of the rat race and you want to actually move to a small town, I know a lot of people have done it and have never looked back. So as we always say on this channel, and we always end it this way, go small, come home.